When things happen in Israel, I call my brother-in-law. Gadi was born in Israel to Romanian Holocaust survivors. He served in the IDF. He went into Lebanon in '82. So on November 4th, 1995, we cried together when Yitzchak Rabin was assassinated. Gadi was always a Labor Party voter, clearly a staunch Zionist. He believed in the peace through strength vision of Rabin and of Shimon Peres. And on that day, the Hebrew date corresponds to yesterday, October 26th, so it's Rabin's 18th yahrzeit. We hung on the phone in silence and disbelief. A Jew killed the head of state of a Jewish nation, of the Jewish nation. Sacred limits had been breached. To admit that the future looked quite bleak on that day. There's no question that Rabin devoted every fiber of his life so that the wars like the one being fought in Israel right now wouldn't happen. So in light of where we are right now, it seems worthwhile to reflect on the man and his dreams. He was born in Jerusalem in 1922. He grew up in the brand new city of Tel Aviv. He received his first gun as a teenager, and he wrote about that. At an age when love flourishes, at the age of 16, I was given a rifle to protect my life, and sadly to kill in times of danger. I thought that a water engineer, that was what his profession he thought it would be, was an important profession in the arid Middle East. But I had to have a gun. So first and foremost, from his teenage years on, Rabin was and saw himself as a defender of a nation. In 1941, the Palmach, an elite fighting force as part of the Haganah, was established. 2 years later, in 1943, Rabin, at the ripe old age of 21, joined the Palmach. He signed up. And if you see pictures of him in his youth, he embodied that bold, brash, brave, burnished, good-looking Israeli. And he quickly established himself as a competent and fearless leader, and he advanced quickly. He led several campaigns against the British, and notably the raid to free imprisoned Holocaust survivors who were held in the concentration camp within Israel, just north of Tel Aviv, called Atlit. Maybe on one of your tours you were even there. It was part of the illegal aliyah called by the British, influx of Holocaust survivors who were fleeing Europe to find refuge in Germany, only to find themselves put behind barbed wire in Israel by the British. Rabin got them out. He was, along with many others, the hero of the 1948 War of Independence. After the land was partitioned, and we have to remember this, it was given half to Arabs and half to Jews. The British prepared to abandon Jerusalem, and the Jews were determined to hold their section of the city, fearing that the Arab armies would quickly invade. And if you've traveled to Jerusalem along the main entrance, the main highway, you've probably noticed those rusting hulks of 75-year-old armored Haganah vehicles that seem to have been cast off on the side of the road, and they're preserved year after year after year. That's a memorial to the vain attempts to take that main road up to Jerusalem to bring supplies to the Jews who were living there. Well, the vehicles were decimated by Arab snipers lined up along the hillsides. Rabin successfully, at 24, I should say, Rabin led the division that fought to open up the Burma Road, which was the road that went around to the side of Jerusalem. I biked up that road. Mickey, and you and I biked up that road together. It was a bypass that saved countless lives. In 1963, at the age of 41, he became chief of staff for the Israel Defense Forces, and he was called to manage the Six-Day War. And when it was over, and this is important for understanding his future as a statesman, he made this observation. He said, The fighters on the front lines saw with their own eyes not only the glory of victory, but also its price. Their comrades fell by them, wallowing in their blood. And I know that the terrible price paid by the enemy also touched the hearts of them as well. Rabin's ability to not only feel the pain of his own country's losses, but also those of the enemy, that reveals the scope of compassion of this hero and his powerful awareness, because he was on the front lines of the price of war, the horrible price of war, both for the victor as well as the vanquished. Under Golda Meir, he was Israel's ambassador to the United States. And he openly supported the Nixon candidacy because he believed that Nixon would be better for Israel. And he established a strong relationship with Henry Kissinger, the Secretary of State at that time. And he successfully, Rabin did, secured arms and funds for Israel from the U.S. government. And his impulses were correct, because when the Yom Kippur War broke out and Israel was in need of military supplies, he worked with Nixon and Kissinger and the U.S. Army to pipeline important supplies that likely enabled Israel to secure its victory in that war. And later, together with Kissinger and Anwar Sadat, he developed a framework for a peace plan with Egypt. Now, it included Israel's partial withdrawal from the Sinai. And because of that, the Meir government tabled the plan. Later, her government fell because of the failure to be prepared for and to anticipate the 73 war. And Rabin rose to the top of the Labor Party ticket, and he became prime minister. Now, during his 3-year term, he continued to drive for peace. He held secret negotiations with King Hussein of Jordan and King Hassan II of Morocco. He also made progress in peace talks with Egypt. And ultimately, the foundation that he set out led to the signing of a full treaty with Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat in 1979. It's notable that despite incredible tensions, that treaty still holds in our time. In 1976, it was revealed that his wife had $10,000 in a bank account in the United States. At that time in Israel, a time of incredible inflation, it was illegal to have those accounts. Rabin resigned from his post as prime minister, and this is so important to hear what he said, because this is the voice of leadership. He said, "I cannot now be the party's candidate for prime minister, not because of the gravity of the offense, but because I have committed an offense, even if technical, and I must act according to my education, my tradition, and my credo, and pay the price." That sense of honor is notable in light of Israel's current leadership. Shimon Peres succeeded Rabin, and it's notable that though they served in the same party, though they were often allied in their vision, they didn't like each other. Not at all. And they often spoke quite derisively about each other. And even though their visions were much aligned, and they often collaborated, they didn't have much nice to say about each other. So the world changed, as it always does. The Soviet Union collapsed, the first Gulf War was fought, a massive influx of Soviet Jews changed the face of Israel, and Rabin once again became prime minister. He took office in July of 1992. Now Bill Clinton was president, and Rabin and a team of political notables, one of whom was Yossi Beilin, who would have been here tonight speaking were it not for the current war. Yossi Beilin stayed back in Israel to offer his services. He and all those folks negotiated the Oslo Accords with the PLO and also a peace treaty with Jordan, which has also held up until the present day. When questioned about his willingness to sit and shake hands with Yasser Arafat and to shake hands on the White House lawn, and if you saw that picture, Rabin had a look of, he didn't have a poker face, let's put it that way. But he notably said, as he shook that man's hand who had killed so many Jews, who had so much blood on his hand, he said, "Peace is made with enemies." The Oslo Agreement fomented powerful opposition in Israel. It often devolved into violence, and there were accusations of his betrayal of Israel from the right wing. And about the increasingly violent protests, Rabin said, "Violence is the erosion of the foundation of Israeli democracy." Now, it's fair to say that no one anticipated how deep that erosion would be. Certainly not Rabin. On November 4th, 1995, as thousands of Israelis joined him at what was then called the Kings of Israel Square in Tel Aviv, at a peace rally. The slogan was, "Ken l'shalom, lo la'alimut." Yes to peace, no to violence. He spoke briefly, and he joined with his notably terrible voice, I can relate, as thousands sang Shir l'Shalom, sing for peace. I'm going to share those words in a moment. As he returned to his car, he was assassinated by Yigal Amir, and the blood-soaked words of that song were found tucked in his pocket. The square is now called Rabin Square. Now, he was human. He had his flaws for sure. But I believe that he aspired for and he reached a level of greatness and leadership rarely seen in our day. When war was required, he was valiant and determined and brave and in front. And when opportunities for peace presented themselves, no matter how small the opening, regardless of his visceral distaste for his negotiating partner, he attempted to make peace with his enemies. And in his pursuit of peace and stability for his much-beloved country, Rabin risked everything. Now, there are those who blame Rabin for our current situation. I'm not among them. Instead, I rest the blame on all of us who lived after him. And I do mean all of us. He gave us the foundations, and too many of us failed to see them for what they were. And instead, we drive wedges of antagonism. We wave, and I say we again broadly, and I'm not just talking about Jews. Wave flags of violence. We engaged, they engaged. We all engaged in horrific acts of terrorism, the latest attack being an example. And we circled wagons of cynicism and defeatism. I can't foresee the future. I can only hope that somewhere in the next generation of Israeli politicians, another leader perhaps in the Arab world, but another leader with Rabin's bravery among the Israelis and Rabin's foresight waits in the wings. Shir LaShalom by Yaakov Rotbilt, written in 1969. Let the sun rise, light up the morning. The purest of prayers will not bring us back. He whose candle was snuffed out and was buried in the dust, bitter crying won't wake him up and won't bring him back. Nobody will bring us back from a dead and darkened pit here. Neither the victory cheer nor the songs of praise will help. So just sing a song for peace. Don't whisper a prayer. Just sing a song for peace in a loud shout. Rak shiru shir l'shalom, shir l'shalom. Allow the sun to penetrate through the flowers. Don't look back. Let go of those departed. Lift your eyes with hope, not through the rifle's sights. Sing a song for love and not for wars. Don't say the day will come. Bring on that day, because it is not a dream. In all the city squares, cheer only for peace. So just sing a song for peace. Don't whisper a prayer. Just sing a song for peace in a loud shout.